All right, so the next thing that we're gonna work on today is taking all this data that we've kind of created and collected here and go through the process of putting that onto or simulate the process of putting that onto a mobile device. And we'll be able to use the same software that we'd use on that mobile device, but we're just going to use it on our desktop instead. But we'll go through the process of checking out data and getting it on that device, and then actually adding some data as if we were out in the field, and then the process of checking that data in and adding it back to our database. So to do that, let's pick up where we left off here. And one thing I should have made you do before the break is save your data. So I can't stress enough that saving your edits often is a good idea. In this particular case, since we're done for now creating data, we're just going to stop editing and, yes, save our edits. Then it's also a good time to save our map documents. So from the File menu, we'll do Save, and that'll save our current view settings, all of our layers, and our table of contents. And the way that all these things are symbolized. Okay, so before we get ready to collect data out in the garden, it's always a good idea to kind of narrow our scope down to a particular area we're going to work in. So when you put your GIS data on a mobile device, they're smaller, they're not as powerful as our desktop computers. And therefore, you want to kind of minimize the amount of stuff you put on them so that it is responsive when you're using it out there. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on this southern part of our Arikayce district, or the South Arikayce section, and just collect data in that. So if we want to just zoom to this area and limit what we're going to work with, what we can do is use a different tool here. We can use our Select Features by Rectangle tool. It's on our Tools toolbar. Click on that guy. Then if you click in the water of our South Arikayce section, you should be able to just select South Arikayce section. If you get the district as well, you can we can do a couple things here to change what we're going to select. So when you layer bits of information or different layers of geographic information over one another, it sometimes gets difficult to select what you want because things are stacked on top of one another. So what you can do here is we have under the table of contents, you can see that we have list our contents by drawing order, which we're on right now. Can list by data source, list by visibility, or list by selection is what we're going to want to do. So we'll click on that. And it shows us here at the top that currently we have selected one feature from our section feature class, one from our district feature class, and one from our area of interest. So there's two little boxes off to the right of the name of each one of these layers. And if you hold your mouse pointer over it, tells you what these boxes are for. You can either choose to make this layer selectable or not selectable. Or the next one over is you can clear the selection. So since we just want our South Arikayce section, I'm going to clear off the area of interest one. I'm going to clear off the district one. And now we're just left with this area selected. So this is a good way to be able to manage what you're selecting and make sure that you select the right thing on your map. So we can switch back now to list by drawing order and get our standard view here. And the point of this whole selection process is that now that we have this selected, we can do, from the selection menu, we can select zoom to selected features. And then we zoom in on just this area and it fills up our map. And since we're just going to collect data in this area, we want to be zoomed to it and just focused on it. And now I'm done with the selection. So from the selection menu, I'm going to hit Clear Selected Features, and we're good to go. So another thing to think about before you go out and collect data in the field is maybe what fields you want to see. You notice that in our Plant Center layer, there were lots of fields that we weren't using, and we already turned some of them off. If we double-click on Plant Center in the table of contents and go to our Fields tab, we can turn off additional fields that we might not be interested in out in the field, and that way when we're out there, we will only see the fields that we're interested in collecting data on. And if you're doing a lot of data collection, this can really speed up your data collection process. So if we're not collecting, we're not going to be filling in any of these IDs at the bottom. We could unclick those. So you could unclick a couple of these if you'd like to see how it turns out. The main thing I wanted to do is turn off these taxonomic fields that we're not using, so we've done that. So I'll leave that as is. Hit OK.
How did you get on layers?
You can, in the table of contents, you can double-click the layer name for Plant Center, or you can right-click on it and hit Properties. And then go to the Fields tab, and you should be good. OK, so the next step is now we've zoomed into the area we're interested in collecting data on. We've turned off any unnecessary fields. Now it's time to take this data set and get it ready to take outside with us. So the software that we're going to use when we're using on our mobile device is called ArcPad, and it's easy to think of it as kind of the lightweight version or the mobile version of ArcGIS, and allows us to do a lot of the same things that we could do in the office, but out on a small screen mobile device. So to get data ready for ArcPad, the first thing we need to do is go to the Customize menu and turn on the extension or the add-on for ArcGIS that allows us to get data ready for that. So click on Extensions, and you'll see that this box comes up that says select the extensions you want to use. And I need to turn on the ArcPad Data Manager, which in my case is the only one that's not on. Generally, you want to limit the number of these extensions that are on because it allows ArcMap to perform a little faster when they're not on. But for today's purposes, we're fine. We'll just leave them all on and make sure especially that ArcPad Data Manager is on. We'll click on Close. And now, just like every other group of tasks in ArcGIS, there's generally a toolbar associated with it. So if you go to the Windows tab, or excuse me, the Customize tab, go to Toolbars, we can turn on our ArcPad Data Manager toolbar, and it gives us the necessary tools we need to get the job done. Once you got that on, you can see the first button on the left is the Get Data for ArcPad button, so we'll click on that. And it comes up with a little description of what this little wizard does. We can just click Next on that. And then the next window is to select data, and it says to choose the layers that you want to get from your current map. And then it gives us a list of basically all the layers that we see in our table of contents over here. And then it has a step for action. Basically, we get to choose whether or not we want to take these layers with us in the field. We can choose to not see them on our screen. And then we can also choose to whether or not we want to edit those layers when we're in the field. So today we're just going to simulate collecting a plant center and a mass planting while we're out there. So today what we'll do is under Action, we'll click this little black triangle for the layer. And if we want to be able to edit data, the best choice for this is to be able to check out data for disconnecting editing in ArcPad. And then under this, it gives us two options. We can either take all of our data that we currently see on our screen with us, and that's the data based on defined extent option, or we can take a blank empty data set, and that is the schema only option. So I'd like to be able to see the things that we've done so far in our plants while we're out there, so I'm going to do data based on defined extent. And then for the mass planting layer, we can do the same thing. We're going to also do checkout for disconnected editing and data based on defined extent. Now the rest of our feature layers here, we're not going to be making any changes to while we're out there. So I'm going to just select those and take them as background data using the AXF option, which is a little better option. And then here, we're going to make this read-only because we're not making any changes to it. So you can select that option, background, AXF, read-only, for the remainder of the layers up to photography, or down to photography. Then you should end up with the top 2 saying checkout data, and the next 5 saying background data, AXF in parentheses. And then at the very bottom, for the aerophotography, we're going to take this with us too, so we can click on this, and this gives us some different options. We want this to be a background TIFF image. And the reason that we're selecting that option is because the other 2 options don't tend to work very well, or not reliably. So. And then from here, we're just going to hit next. And then here, if we had a mobile device that was equipped with a camera, as a lot of smartphones are, or sometimes you get GPS data collectors that have a camera built in, we could be taking pictures of all the objects that we're mapping while we're out in the field. So if we're mapping plants, we could be taking pictures of each plant, or even multiple pictures of each plant while we're out there. And if we had added those fields in, or to each one of these layers for storing photography, we could select which field we wanted to store those pictures in. But we're not going to be doing that today, so we're just going to skip this step. But the options are available if you're interested. And then this next screen here, it says select your output options. And it says, what data do you want? And it's set to currently that we want data in the current display extent. So we already zoomed in to this area of the garden that we're interested in. So we're just going to take data that we can currently see with us. And then if you remember earlier, I talked a little bit about definition queries, about being able to hide dead plants and show alive plants. This option here is checked, as if we had one of those definition queries set up so that we're hiding our dead plants, it would honor that and we wouldn't be taking those dead plants with us. So we'll leave that checked. And then the next one, it says only get the fields specified as visible in the layer properties. So we've gone and we've turned off some of those fields we're not using. Leaving this option checked means that we won't see those fields while we're out there. And then we can, the next box here is specify a name for the folder that would be created to store this data. And what we're going to do is, I usually recommend entering today's date. So I'm going to do this in a slightly different format, though, to make my folders sort correctly, assuming that I'm doing a big data collection project. I'm going to be going out multiple days in a row. I want to be able to manage this data really easy, so I'm going to start with the year, and then the month, and then the day. Oh, wow, look at that. I still have not gotten used to that. And that way, when I check all these things back in the office, they'll be sorted in the correct order for me. And then I might also put an extra descriptive name saying what I'm doing today. So we're going to be mapping South Ericaceae. So I might put that in there. Then it asks, where do you want to store this data? So I want to keep this with the rest of my GIS data. So I'm going to hit the folder browse button here. And I know that my data is under computer on the C drive in our Public Gardens Workshop folder. And this is for the Arboretum of UC Davis, so we'll put it in the UC Davis folder. And click OK. And then it asks if we want to create a ArcPad map document. Yep, sure do. We can leave that name in there. Then at the bottom here, it's got this option for validate feature classes before checking out, and we're going to unclick this. What this does is it'll go through and make sure that our data abides by all the rules that we've set up in the data model, and generally these are going to go through to make sure that we filled in values in a few fields, but since we've been kind of taking a shortcut on some of the stuff today and not filling everything in, we'll leave this unchecked so that it doesn't yell at us saying, hey, you need to fill in these fields. Then we can hit the next button, and we'll leave this a default option of create the ArcPad data on this computer now. And hit finish, and it'll go through and create a little subset of this data, or our entire GIS to take with us out in the field. And it provides us with a little report on how things go. Most important thing to look at here is that we're checking out a total of 8 layers. 7 features layers, and they all succeeded. 1 image layer, and it succeeded. So everything worked. We're good to go. So press OK. And now we are ready to actually take that folder that it created and put it on our mobile device. But since we don't have any mobile devices today, we're just going to open up the ArcPad program that we'd be using on our device and open up that data. So if we go to our Start menu, go to All Programs, go to ArcGIS, then you'll see the folder for ArcPad 10. Select ArcPad 10 for Windows. And you'll probably get this option here, or this little message here. That's just fine. Hit OK on that. And it loads up ArcPad for us. And in ArcPad, so this is the same program that you'd be running on your mobile device. You basically get the same view. You'll notice that a lot of the windows are kind of narrow and confined to the middle of the screen because they're designed to fit on a really small screen on your mobile device.
Sorry, you lost me. That was in all programs?
Yeah, all programs, ArcGIS, ArcPad 10, and ArcPad 10 for Windows, the shortcut there. Okay, so now once we're in ArcPad, we want to choose a map to open since we've already created a map in our last step here. It gives us the name of some samples that are installed here, but we're going to hit the folder icon at the bottom to open one up. And we're going to navigate to where our data is stored for the workshop today. So it's under Computer, it's on the C drive, in the Public Gardens Workshop folder, and in the UC Davis Arboretum folder. And there you see this folder it's created with today's dates and the name of the area we're working on. So we can double click on that, and inside of it you'll see that there's just one file. It is the map document that we're going to use. So we'll select that and hit open. And now you basically see the same view of the data that we saw in the office, but in a slightly different format here in a different program. So once we're in this program, we could imagine we're looking at this on our mobile screen. If we're looking at this on a device with GPS, it would show you a little crosshair of where your current location is. As you move, that would move with you. And if you got to the location of a particular plant you wanted to map, you could use some of the built-in tools to automatically collect your location. But you might just be out there and you're interested in just updating some attributes about your plant. So maybe we want to update this plant that we mapped over here and add some additional information. To do that, just like in the office, we have to enter into an edit mode to be able to make changes. So you can see the similar icon that we used to get to our editor toolbar before. They're called drawing tools here, but it's a pencil with some dots. Click on that, it brings up a whole set of menus associated with that. And we click the pencil on the left-hand side, that's to start or stop editing. And we want to start editing. We're going to click on Plant Center because we want to make changes to that. And now we're editing that layer. Then we can use this select or pointer tool here. Select the plant we're interested in editing. And just like in the office, we hit the Attributes button, or the Feature Properties button in this case. And it brings up a list of all of our attributes formatted in a nice compact format that we could use on our mobile device. So if we were out here, we can see that our attributes are been sorted into multiple pages to fit on our screen. There's different tabs across the top. We could go over to page 2, and maybe we're going to measure the size of this plant while we're out there. We could enter this in to this spot right here. For plant size, maybe we find out that this guy is 120 inches. And I just hit enter, and that's been saved. If you want to enter additional attributes, you can select it again and make those changes. So maybe I'm updating this guy, so today I also want to change on page 3. I might want to change the update date to be today and select my name from the list since I've made those changes. And hit OK. So that's how you could update some features while you're out there. And then say you wanted to map some new ones, we could do that as well. You could grab the point tool from the top menu here. And just as we did in the office, we could place a point wherever we'd like. I'm going to get this guy here in the north strip. I place a point on the map. It brings up a window to enter the attributes. And we can enter whatever information we're interested in. Maybe I know that this plant has a accession number. And I know its qualifier. And you may not know this information when you're out in the field, so you can choose to leave these blank and fill this back in when you get inside. And maybe I know I should definitely know what the type of plant this is. I'm going to say it's a shrub. I may or may not know what family it's in, but I'm guessing that it's in this Ericaceae family, so I'll leave that in there. And maybe I know that this plant is a manzanita, but I'm not totally sure what species it is, so I'm going to leave it as manzanita species. To get to the rest of the attributes, click on page 2. You can enter a common name. Since I'm out in the field, I should be able to assess what condition this plant's in. We'll say it's in fair condition. I can measure its size, and maybe this is a pretty young plant. It's pretty small. Say it's 24 inches. Oops. If I hit enter, it closes that window. You can click the feature properties button to bring that back up. You can enter our section name and any other information, or we can choose to leave most of this stuff blank and enter it when we get back inside. If we know the plant date, we can enter it. We certainly should know the survey date and that we're doing it. And we'll leave all these ID fields blank for now. All right. And we can, when we're all done, you can press enter or hit OK. And now that plant's been added to the map. Sure.
Didn't they save the archive previous entries on the phone?
Does it save previous entries? That's an advanced feature of ArcGIS. If you use the more of the server-based ArcGIS software, it will save your entire history of changes if you set that up. But the standard installation of ArcGIS for desktop does not do that. Okay, so say we're done with our field data collection and we want to stop editing and save our changes. We would hit the stop editing button and select our plant center layer so that it's stopped editing it. And now our ArcPad automatically saves your changes as you go. So if your mobile device happens to get locked up while you're out doing this, you can usually rest assured that it's saved your last or most recent change, hopefully, or at least the one before that. Then we're all done. We can just exit out of ArcPad. No need to save the map document. And now say we've gone back into the office and we're ready to check those changes and edits that we made out in the field back in here. So we're kind of gonna reverse the process that we took to check it out, and there's another button on this ArcPad Data Manager toolbar. It says Get Data from ArcPad. You can click on that, and then it asks you to choose the ArcPad AXF files you want to check in. Well, assuming that we've copied these back from our mobile device to the location that we saved it on our hard drive, we could just hit the Add button here. And again, remember that our data is stored on C, in our Public Gardens Workshop folder, in the UC Davis Arboretum folder, and our South Ericaceae folder. And it's got two files to choose here. One is background layers, and that's all those layers that we weren't editing out there. And since we didn't make any changes to those, we don't have to worry about those. The other one is this UC Davis Arboretum _GDB. These are all the layers that we made a change to, so we want to select these. The important thing to know is if you're not making changes to your background layers, then that's not the file you want to select. Select this guy and hit open. And we can see that it gives us a little report of the changes that were made. So it says that for the Plant Center feature class, we've added one feature and we modified one feature, which is exactly what we did. So if we want to check those in, we'll check the checkbox next to it, and then hit check in. And then it warns us, it says you're not in an edit session right now, so if you check these in, you won't be able to undo this change. Now we could cancel this and start an edit session, and that would allow us to hit the undo button if we didn't like what we saw come up, but pretty positive that we're going to be okay today. We could also always manual delete it, so I'm going to hit yes, I want to continue. And then it gives us a little report saying that 1 out of 1 file was processed, and here are the results. You hit OK to that, and cancel, or hit the red X on this guy. And now we should see that we've added, the plant that we added while we were out there is now shows up on our map. If we zoom into it, we can see that it's automatically been labeled. And then we could also verify that its attributes are correct by either clicking on it with the identify tool, or if we wanted to edit it, we could enter an edit session and check any changes that we made to that. Check that data and then check the changes on this guy. Any questions on that process?
So what kind of maps is it special?
So the ArcPad software runs on Windows mobile devices or Windows devices. So you can take a laptop out that runs Windows, you can take a little tablet computer that runs Windows, or you can take a Windows mobile specific device, which could be an older smartphone, but generally all of the GPS data collector devices that are suitable for this kind of mapping run that software on them already. So a lot of people are interested in using an iPhone or an Android phone or an iPad to be able to do this sort of thing. And there are applications that are designed for those devices. The basic functionality that those provide is just to be able to view data while you're out in the field. There is the possibility of doing editing on those devices, but it generally requires a server setup of ArcGIS software, which is a little bit more complicated and definitely beyond the scope of today. So it's possible to do, but it requires a lot more setup and customization. But this is the general solution that most people will do if they're doing data collection.
And how accurately is it locating that item?
Well, this depends on how you're doing it. So if you are doing kind of the technique that we just used here, where you're just updating things or walking around and putting points on the map, then it's as accurate as your placement, and it's totally arbitrary. But if you're using, if you're running this on a GPS device, then it depends on the accuracy of your GPS device. Most gardens, when they do this kind of mapping, will get what they call mapping grade GPS, which generally gets you down under a foot of accuracy. So somewhere in the range of 6 to 12 inches of accuracy. Some gardens, like the Arnold Arboretum, have a more expensive and higher quality GPS that gets you to what they say decimeter level accuracy, so which is pretty accurate. So there's a lot of different varieties of accuracy out there, but it generally goes that the more money you spend, the better your accuracy.
Are those the Trimble?
Yeah, Trimble devices are pretty common, and there's lots of other brands that are comparable to it. But yeah, not your consumer GPS that you would get for hiking or whatever at REI or something like that. Those generally aren't suitable for doing this stuff. But yeah, so like a Trimble device or similar. Yeah.
But so otherwise you were just eyeballing it.
Right. So everything we've done today is all eyeball. Yeah. And for gardens that don't have a lot of staff time or budget, this solution can work well. Once you get hardscape drawn in from a photograph, it's you can sometimes measure plants. A lot of times gardens will go out and actually measure and say that this plant is located 6 foot from this sidewalk at about this compass angle, and you can draw stuff in and achieve a fairly good level of accuracy with that. But it all depends on what your ultimate application of this is and how much money you have to and time to be able to spend on it. Any other questions about that?